Today we're going to be talking about crisis communication. And crisis communication, by definition, is when the organization you work for, your organization, is in some form of peril. That public opinion has gone against your organization for whatever reason, and your company needs to come forward and put its best face forward. And we're going to talk about what to say, what not to say, and how to say it when it's time for you to talk to the media. When crisis communication happens in your organization, it means something publicly has occurred and your organization is under fire. The crisis is that the public is beginning to think your organization is not what it's cracked up to be. And you'll be contacted by the media, or you will contact the media, and you'll sit down for an interview. Maybe it's with a newspaper reporter, maybe it's a television interview. But these are the rights you have when you sit down to the interview. They also give you the ideas and the mindset for engaging in interviews as you sit down with the media. First is you have the right to set your own pace in an interview. Don't let anybody rush you. Remember, the key here is to show a very well put together, very calm, very organized face to your organization. And so take your time with the interview. Next is you have the right to ask the reporter to repeat a question. If you don't understand the question, ask them to repeat it. If you don't have an immediate answer and you want to buy more time, you can get 5 more seconds by asking them to repeat the question. Thirdly, if the question is unclear, ask for clarification. Say, I'm not exactly sure what you're looking for an answer here. Can you clarify the question? Can you reword it? All right? Be very sure that you know what the reporter is asking you, because there may be answers that you won't give if not asked about. Right? You don't just want to spill out all the information there. You want to be very selective and careful about how you present the information, because what you say can be held against your organization, and you could be liable in a court of law. Fourth, you have the right to a two-way conversation. Again, when that camera is trained on you, or the person is taking notes, they are going to reflect your personality and again your organization's personality. So you want to appear calm. You want to use ordinary language. You don't want to appear nervous or stressed in any way, because then if you do that, people will wonder what you are hiding. We've all seen interviews with politicians before where they seem nervous and crafty, and we wondered, what were they hiding? Unfortunately, we often found out what they were hiding, and it was even worse than what we suspected. All right. Number 5, you have the right to set the time and location of the interview. You might want to think about having it in a location at your organization that puts the best face forward. Something that's really visually impacting, so your audience sees this very safe, very clean, very well-run company. You don't have to answer questions that you feel are inappropriate or that make you uncomfortable. You have to be careful, though, how you answer. And generally, when that kind of question comes up, you want to say, hey, I am not going to answer that question. It is inappropriate for this interview. Because if you say no comment, then again, we wonder what you're hiding. You do have the right to demand a retraction. Notice the language here. You have the right to demand. You don't have the right to get a retraction. And you do not want them to misprint information, because retractions don't get read. People don't get the morning newspaper to get a retraction. And how often in television have you seen retractions or them taking time to correct information? They never do it at the beginning of a broadcast. It's never on the front page of a newspaper. You have to be very, very careful to make sure they get the right information and publish it. You do have the right to file a complaint against a reporter. Sometimes reporters who are on stories for a long time get personal, or there may be personality conflicts, so you want to watch out for that. And then you also have the right to say, I don't know. You always have the right to say, I don't know. Don't be afraid. Don't ever speculate. Okay, it's better for you to look like you don't know what you're talking about by saying, I don't know, than to say something and confirm that you don't know what you're talking about and have your company held liable for the comments you make. The reporter does have some rights, but only a few. And again, we're not very concerned about the reporter. They know how to do their job. You need to represent your organization. First things, reporters have the right to have phone calls returned. Always return a reporter's phone call. It is double jeopardy when you get a call from the media. When the media calls you, they expect an answer. And if not, they will report, and you've seen this hundreds of times, the company was unavailable for comment, or several phone calls were not returned from the organization. You got to make sure that you're returning those phone calls. They have the right to have their deadlines honored. This is very important. When the media calls my organization, first thing I say is, what is your deadline? So I know what kind of time frame we're working on it. And they may only have an hour. They may have a half hour. But they may have a couple of days. But remember that when they're doing a newscast, the timeliness is essential. So if you wait too long to sit down and have an interview with them, they may not run the story because, frankly, they don't need to broadcast something that isn't newsworthy. They do deserve to be treated as individuals. I don't think of them as a conglomerate. Don't think of them as the evil media empire, the liberal press. You have to treat every reporter as an individual. And you certainly don't want to make enemies. Be very friendly to your reporter, and hopefully they will be friendly back and treat you respectfully in the story that they present to the public. And the media always has the right to honest and accurate answers. Always provide honest answers. Never lie. It never does anyone any good, and invariably you will get caught in the lie. Just like your mother, the public and the media have a way of finding out, and they'll dig up the truth one way or the other. So be very, very careful to make sure each of your answers is highly accurate and honest. All right, so we've covered the Bill of Rights, and it's important to know those rights, but we want to break it down more into some fast and hard rules about when you sit down with the media, what to do. And that's what I'm going to go through now. And here we're just going to try and show you, just give you some basic rules. Again, as it relates to your crisis communication assignment, these are the guidelines you need to follow. You need to make sure that you do everything that I outlined here, and that will make sure that you get a good grade on that assignment. But more importantly, when you leave this class, when you have a television camera thrust into your face, follow these guidelines so you best represent yourself and your organization. First is the idea to empathize. Here what we're saying is, if there are victims, if there are people hurt, if there were people put out because possibly your company did something wrong or something related to your company, always empathize with the victims. Take the time in the media to say, we are with, in thought and prayer, those people who were injured in this accident, or those folks who were unable to get the sales prices on the Libby soup. We feel for them and we understand their frustrations. Now, notice what I didn't say. I didn't say, we're sorry. I didn't say, we messed up. I do not take blame, all right? If you say you're sorry and we messed up, it makes you feel good, but it holds your company liable, and you may not want to pay that big check to all those people who are lining up in lawyers' offices to sue you. Secondly, there is no comment. Never say no comment, because no comment assumes guilt. When you say no comment, what the public hears is, I did something really, really bad and I don't want to talk about it. All right? Now, instead of saying no comment, you may not answer the question, and that's fine, but give them something. All right? And this is where we talk about redirecting the media. Say to the media, say they ask you why your company negligently killed 40 people in an accident. Okay? We are deeply saddened by the deaths of those individuals, but understand that we have a history of excellent safety at this organization. That's the redirection. I'm saying, yes, this happened, but we're a good company. And generally they are. You take any company worth anything, and you can generally find where they've helped more people than they've hurt. And so we emphasize the positive, and we never say no comment. Third, mentioned it before, never ever speculate. Well, I think that we're going to win the lawsuit, or I think the customers are going to like this. You never know, and you don't want to be out there guessing and have your guess on record for them to prove that it was wrong later on. Right? It's dangerous territory. Stay away from it. And the media will always get you to try and speculate. Can you tell us what the Attorney General's office is likely to do at this point, or will the federal government And you hear it all the time, and you don't want to be caught in that. So simply say, it is impossible to tell the future, and we will not do it. We're not going to speculate. Don't blame anyone for anything. The blame game was notoriously acted out in the recent Firestone/Ford tire fiascos with the Explorers. And there were deaths. People died as a result of whatever negligence occurred on whichever side. But every time Ford got up and said it was Firestone's fault, every time Firestone said it was Ford's fault, both of them looked bad. They would have benefited from this lecture, unfortunately. Those multi-million-dollar CEOs hardly ever take online classes like this. Never speak off the record. Okay? There is no such thing as off the record. I will say that now and forever. There is no such thing as off the record. If you give a reporter a juicy tidbit off the record, ethically, they should not use it. But time and time again through history, we have seen where reporters were told something off the record and went ahead and used it because it made for a great story. All right? And once it's out there, nobody cares if it was on the record or was off the record. They just know that you said it. So don't speak off the record. Number 6, emphasize the positive. Always go back to the positive, and this relates to what I said with number 2. You don't want to say no comment. You want to say, hey, this is the positive of this organization, and you're missing that fact. When you're concentrating on this one incident, you miss all the positive and the good things of this organization. Never repeat a negative question. Number 7, this is important as well. If they talk about the tragic results of an accident, or they basically have a question that in hearing it sounds really bad for your organization, don't repeat it. Don't put it back out there because you don't want them using you saying that bad information or that those bad scenarios when you're speaking. 8, correct inaccuracies. Anytime there is misinformation, no matter how minute, take the opportunity to correct that information with the media. All right? You want to exert yourself as the authority, and when the media has messed something up and done something incorrectly, this is your golden opportunity to correct that inaccuracy. And number 9, as I mentioned before, always tell the truth. Each and every time. Now, there's a fine line to be drawn here as well. I want you to always tell the truth, but you have to make a decision about what you will or will not disclose. Now, probably if it's a major crisis in your organization, your lawyers will be very clear about what you are to talk about, what you are not to talk about. But aside from that, you have to make an ethical question. You have to ask yourself, should I put this information forward or should I not put this information forward? And there are some really tough questions to answer there. But whenever you put it forward, make sure it's the truth. All right? Last, I want to talk about some talking points. Talking points are basically statements that folks use whenever they're trying to get their points across. And these are really good ideas anytime you go into a press conference or sitting down with the media to have talking points written out and memorized. Right? And we're going to talk about this. These talking points are written in advance. Basically, they're just sentences. They're statements. And again, they emphasize the positive. They're basically what is the message you want to get out there. And you craft them very carefully and you take your time. So you're not trying to think up of the positive things you want to say during the interview. You're getting them said as you go. Secondly, they're memorized. You don't read them off a piece of paper because that is very disingenuous. It does not seem sincere when you're reading the positive statements. But you have them memorized and you reiterate them every time you get a question from a reporter. And consistency is key. Reiteration of messages. If you listen to politics and the way politicians talk, they constantly say terms again and again because they want them to stick. Fuzzy math in our last election was President Bush's term that he threw out there, and it stuck, and they continued to repeat it, right, to drill the message home. You want to be consistent with your talking point and be complete. Try and cover every aspect of talking points, all possible questions that may be asked during the interview. You want to make sure you don't leave any gaps so that you are stuck not knowing how to answer a question when the opportunity presents itself. Remember again, too, detail isn't necessary. You don't need to be terribly specific about what you are saying. You need to speak in general terms. Okay? Again, your lawyers probably won't let you speak in detail about any specific incident that has happened at your organization. But don't worry so much about the details. Get the broad message across. And finally, language is absolute key. Craft the message very, very carefully. If you listen often to the news, one term that I love is vast majority. A vast majority, by definition, is 51%, right? Up to 99%. What makes a majority vast or not vast is a matter of complete subjectivity. So think carefully about the language you will use, and try and use language to your advantage as you craft your message. All right. These are some examples of talking points. I pulled this off of the Highway Safety website. You can see that at the bottom. But these are very carefully worded talking points. Parents often don't realize they need to alter the type of children's safety seats they use as children grow. All right. That kind of language. Parents talking about children. All right. They don't talk about the death of young people. They use children because it has more of an emotional effect. They have a goal. They want to get kids in safety seats, and they're going to use language to their advantage. Thus ends the lecture on crisis communication. I hope you have a good sense of what we're covering, how it's being covered. I hope you're ready now to get that crisis scenario and develop your message for your organization and put your best face forward for you and your organization.